Hi, and welcome back to my channel, where I'm going to cover the Druid's Circle of Dreams class specialization from Xanathar's Guide to Everything, providing a brief description of the subclass, as well as explain and set up the various features gained. The Druids of this circle will bring a dreamy wonder to the areas in which they live and travel, to help improve the moods of those around them. They gain the ability to heal wounds, create a restful sanctuary, travel large distances in the blink of an eye, and return to a previous location of rest, as well as a few other capabilities. A druid who has studied this class specialization will be very useful to a party, primarily due to their capabilities around healing, traveling large distances, and being able to create a protective sanctuary around places of rest. Unlike other classes, a druid chooses their circle at level 2, giving the player some time to decide what circle they want to take before they commit to it. As such, if you're looking for a means to create a druid, use the link in the description below to learn how to create a very basic Druid class character. So with that, let's go ahead and drop our class onto this particular character so we can trigger the class specialization pop-up here, and we're going to choose a Circle of Dreams. And as a result, the first feature your character is going to gain is called Balm of the Summer Court, and this feature is added when your character takes the circle. With this feature, you will now gain access to what's called a pool of energy, much like the way that a sorcerer gains sorcery points, or a bard gains inspiration die, but in this case, the number of d6 die your character gains will be equal to your character's level. This pool of energy is available for your character to be able to heal other creatures or characters who happen to be within 120 feet of your character. It is a bonus action, which means it must be used before the end of your turn, but it can be used anytime during your turn. So essentially, if you had a level 12 character, you would have a pool of 12 d6 you could make use of for this feature. However, you will be unable to use them all at once. In fact, you can only use a maximum of half of your character's druid level in a single use. And what that means is that for our level 12 character, we would only be able to roll 6 out of the 12 d6 that we have available when we go to actually use the feature. For example, if there was another party member who is within 120 feet of your character and they needed healing, your level 2 druid would be able to heal them 1d6 worth of hit points, whereas a level 12 character would be able to roll 66 worth of hit points and the party member would regain those. Additionally, that party member would gain temporary hit points equal to the number of dice rolled. So our level 2 druid would grant them 1 temporary hit point, whereas the level 12 druid would be able to grant them 6 temporary hit points. However, once the dice are used, your character will be unable to use them again until they complete a long rest. So our level 2 character would be able to have 1 additional d6 die roll that they have available to them throughout the course of the day before they would have to complete a long rest. Whereas our level 12 character still has 6 total die that they have available for use, but you don't have to use them all in one run. That particular level 12 druid could decide to use only 2 die the next time they have to go through and do this, leaving them 4 more for the remaining duration of the day. After they have used all of those die rolls, if you will, at that particular point in time, would that character have to complete a long rest to regain all 12 uses. However, because this is something that we will need to take and make use of as an action, we're going to need to ensure it is in our Actions tab. So all we have to do is drag and drop it into our Actions tab and set up the power group, and I'm going to call this Circle of Dreams. And that now sets it up so that we at least have our temporary hit points available for us to use. However, we still have to go through and set up the number of d6 die that we're going to want to roll. There are a couple of ways that we can go ahead and set this up when it comes to our d6 die roll. The first is that we can go ahead and add in a new healing action and then set this up so that we have a d6 equal to, at most, 1 through to half of our level. So we could set up a number of groupings here that we can go through and track how many die we're going to roll. So, for example, 1d6, we go ahead and create another healing action. We open that up. And in this case, whoops, I got to make sure that we have our line there first. In this case, we go ahead and drop 2 dice into there. And now we've got up to level 4 covered, if you will. There is, however, a problem with this. How do you track how many you have used? That's kind of a bit of a pain point. So I have a better approach for this. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete this D2 one here, the 2D6 one, and I'm going to keep this 1D6. And here is why. This is now flexible no matter the level of our character. So if we get to level 12 with this character, all we have to do is drag that out and click on that 5 more times to get a total of 6d6 if we're going to use 6d6 at once. Nice and convenient. The next thing we're going to do is set up the number of uses. And what I mean by that is we're simply going to modify this so that we have a number of daily uses. In this case, we have 2 daily uses because of our character level. Yes, that does mean we are going to need to increase this particular value every single time our character gains a level. That's really the only pain point about this setup. But in my opinion, the benefits outweigh the pain. And here is why. At level 2, we know we can use a maximum of 1d6. So I drag that out, I have now used it, and I roll it and apply it to a character, or I just drop it onto a character inside of the Actions tab, and I'll show you that in a minute. Now all I have to do is tick off that I've now used it once. I can now see at a glance how many more uses I have available to me. And now if I'm required at a later point in time to go and make use of another healing one here, it becomes unavailable for me to use until I have completed a long rest. So let's go ahead and take a look at this in the combat tracker. The first thing to note is that our Druid is going to be going first. So I'm going to set them with the action token. Now, throughout the course of the combat round, if you will, let's say that this is round 12. I can't modify it there. 12. There we go. And let's say that our wolf has taken some damage. I'm going to go ahead and add 15 points of damage to that wolf. Because this feature is a bonus action, and because our Druid has the action token, we can go ahead and attempt to heal this wolf. So what we would do is we would simply drag and drop this die onto the wolf. And what that will do is automatically heal the wolf based on the roll that was calculated from that die roll. We would also then be able to drop this 1 temporary hit point onto our wolf because that's how many die that we went and used. And at later levels, obviously this total number of hit die would need to be adjusted each time you have a variable amount of die that you're going to roll. So let's say our level 12 example is in play again, and they used 3 hit die as part of the healing roll here, then we would have to modify this 1 temporary hit point to be 3 temporary hit points before we drop it on to the target in question. And that's as complicated as that whole thing is. So let's go ahead and move on to our next feature. The next feature that your character will gain is called Hearth of the Moonlight and Shadow, and this happens at level 6. It gives your character the ability to create an invisible, protective barrier that has a 30-foot radius around a specific point in space during a short or a long rest. It will give a +5 bonus to any stealth or perception checks made from anyone who is standing inside the radius of that sphere. However, let's say that your party has decided to light a campfire for the evening. It will not be visible outside of the radius of the sphere, but if there happens to be a lot of smoke coming off of that campfire, it's entirely possible that once it leaves the radius of that sphere, the smoke itself will be visible. You're going to want to be careful of that. And what that essentially means is that the odors associated with a campfire, be it cooking or just the burning of the wood, so the smoky smell that you can get, that might expose your location. The smoke itself, because it's emanating out of the sphere, might also expose your location. But if you're in a densely populated forest, if you will, when it comes to the flora that happens to be around a tropical forest, for instance, the visibility of the fire, or the smoke specifically, might only occur above the treetops. So the only way someone would be able to see that is if they're at the top of the trees, flying, or on some form of high perch where they can see it. They might not be able to mark your exact location. If, however, they're within the radius or just outside of the radius of the sphere, they might smell bacon cooking if your character or party happens to be cooking bacon. So it means that you're going to still want to be careful about how you make use of a campfire within the sphere. Additionally, once the rest period is finished, whether it's a short rest or a long rest, the sphere will vanish. But there really aren't any limitations as to how often your character can make use of that. The only requirement is your character has to be resting. Or if there happens to be another druid who is also of the Circle of Dreams within the party, then that druid has to be resting. But there is a bit of a limitation in play here, and that is really going to be around the radius of the sphere itself. For example, if you're in a relatively open clearing, but at about 20 to 25 feet out, there is a full wall, let's say off in the north direction from where you're casting the sphere and placing the sphere, when the edge of the sphere hits that point in the barrier, it will block it. It won't be able to go past that 30-foot section of wall, or 25-foot section of wall. It will essentially create a gap there, or it will bend out so that the other areas that are on either side of the wall that stretch out 30 feet, you might have an opening, or you might have a bend, if you will, or a dent in that sphere, if you will, from where the wall is to where the other edge of the sphere happens to be. It's going to be entirely up to the DM how they want to play it, because they really don't give, quote-unquote, clarity, if you will, as to how that kind of a situation is handled. But what it does mean is if you happen to be within a 10-foot wide room, and it is 15 feet long, and you center the sphere into the center of that particular room, then all of the walls will block it from going outside of that particular room, thus preventing any exposure that you happen to have some form of protection up in that room. So if somebody opens up the door and they look in the room, they won't see anything. If they happen to walk past the door or cross the threshold of that door, they will all of a sudden see you sitting there doing whatever it was that your character was doing. But this isn't something that we have to go and add to our character's actions tab. It's really there as a role-playing point of view to essentially allow you, the player, to add a level of protection around your camp and make things a little bit more complicated for the Dungeon Master when potentially setting up an evening encounter or an encounter that occurs while you're trying to rest. It is also something that your party could use tactically, in the sense that maybe you're being chased, you've managed to create enough of a distance that you can spin up this sphere, if you will, and potentially hide yourself from the passing party, or the party that happens to be chasing your party, giving you a little bit of flexibility around how you make use of it. But that doesn't mean we're done with level 6. We still have to go back and modify our Balm of the Summer to ensure that the number of uses it has is accurate. Now you'll see here, I've been modifying it as I've been adding the levels to our character so that we currently have 5, but I didn't adjust the one for level 5 to level 6, and that's because I wanted to show that on camera. All you have to do is switch back to the preparation mode here and simply update that to be a 6. Now we have 6 uses, and again, remember, you can only use 3 uses at one time. So we essentially have 2 full uses if we wanted to do our full half uses, or we could have 3 uses where we roll 2 die, or we have 6 uses where we can roll 1 die. It's entirely up to you. At level 10, your character will gain the Hidden Pass feature, which allows your character to teleport up to 60 feet in any direction to an area that is unoccupied by anything or anyone that your character can see. It also allows you to potentially teleport another creature who you can touch to an unoccupied space that is up to 30 feet away that your character can see. So it gives you a little bit of flexibility here. It does have a number of uses limitation, and that number of uses is equal to your character's wisdom modifier, and it operates as a bonus action. And this means that as long as your character has not cast a spell, your character will be able to take this action even after taking, say, a melee swing or a ranged attack with a ranged-based weapon, execute the bonus action, and potentially drag yourself and a party member 30 feet away from where you're currently standing. And to regain all of those uses, your character will have to complete a long rest. So, because this does have the requirement to be tracked, we're going to add it to our Actions tab. And then I'm going to set up a number of uses equal to our Wisdom bonus, which in this case is +4. So that means that our character can use this 4 times before they have to complete a long rest. And there we go. The last feature your character gains happens at level 14, and it is called Walker in Dreams. It allows your character to use the Dream, Scrying, or Teleportation circle spells after completing a short or a long rest, without actually expending a spell slot or any components. However, the Teleportation circle spell does work a little differently than it is defined in the actual spell information. Instead of creating a portal to a permanent teleportation circle that you have previously prepared, this spell opens up a portal to the last location where your character completed a long rest. The portal lasts until the end of your character's next turn, essentially ensuring that your entire party can pass through it before your own character passes through, thus closing the portal. This would be a nice, quick way to return to an inn where your character last took a long rest, but it could have some creative issues, such as someone appearing in another room rather than in the one that the portal was targeted because of space limitations, for example. If, however, your character has not rested on the plane your character is currently standing on, then the spell itself will fail, but you won't expend any of the uses, meaning you could use it again without needing a rest. However, using it again without actually having completed a long rest to quote-unquote set a target location on the same plane that you're standing on would essentially trigger another failure. So you're still going to want to go through and at some point complete a long rest in order to set quote-unquote a target zone that you can then later make use of as a returning point once you decide to cast the spell again. Now, if, however, you have used the feature and it was successful in opening a portal and you traversed through it, your character would not be able to make use of it again until they completed a long rest, thus, quote-unquote, resetting, if you will, a target zone. And that means because this is a trackable object, we're going to want to ensure that we add it to our character's actions sheet here. I'm going to copy and paste that, and I'm going to set up a single daily use. Oops, I set it on Fey Ancestry. My bad. There we go. So now we have Walker and Dreams set up to be useful, and this can be used during a combat scenario. Keep in mind, however, that if you are currently engaged in combat and one of your party members has gone through, then one of the combatants you're currently fighting could potentially follow them. So it might not necessarily be wise to use until combat is over. And that does bring us to the conclusion of this particular class specialization. And the Circle of Dreams looks to be a highly useful subclass with a few interesting capabilities that would certainly enhance the survivability of a party. I'd be curious to play this particular character myself, and in fact I might decide to do that at some point in the future. However, this does bring us to the end of this particular video. I hope you found it useful and informative, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Thank you. I wish to thank you for taking the time to watch this particular video. I hope you found it informative and useful to familiarizing yourself with Fantasy Grounds in general, and that you had fun in the process. If you found the video useful and you liked the content of the particular video, go ahead and click that like button to let me know. And if you have any questions specific to the topic covered by this particular video, or just have some comments in general, please feel free to post something in the comments section, and I will do my best to respond to any questions that are asked. Additionally, I do release content quite regularly, and it's generally specific to Fantasy Grounds or 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons at this time. So if you'd like to be notified when new videos come out, go ahead and subscribe and click the notification bell to ensure that notification is sent to you when I release a new video.